Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
What a way to start the day. Thank you all for being here. It's a real pleasure. We've got something special for you in store over the next 20 minutes, rapid fire round, as they say. And this is all in aid of our podcast, The Places We'll Go Marketing Show. It's been going on for 5 years now, 202nd episode here today. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us, and this is going to be put on the platform in a couple of days' time as well. So you can listen back if you don't find any of you want to listen back to some of the tips. So the little story and secret goes is when we were organizing this, we actually asked the organizers who would be one of the most wonderful guests that we could have on here this morning. And we're really privileged that we've got Tanya Weller here this morning for you. Yeah.
Embarrassing.
We're really glad that she's accepted. But let me give you a little bit of the lowdown, and then Mark's going to kick in with the first question here. So Tanya is the marketing director for home at Samsung Electronics, and she's done a variety of roles at Samsung, spent the last 7 years there. And prior to that, I thought she's had a pretty cool job with Merlin Entertainment as well as the head of marketing for the London Eye. Very cool. We'll get into that too. But Tanya has traversed both the brand side as well as agency side, having spent 10 years at exposure with clients such as Heineken, EE, Microsoft, Netflix, and Activision. So she's just got an amazing amount of experience on loads of different sides of the coin when it comes to marketing. So what sums up Tanya's expertise? Well, I would say three things. She's a brand and experience leader. She really has developed a range of global brands and indeed is a champion for innovation, inclusion, and sustainability. So with that in mind, thank you so much, Tanya, for being here, and I'll pass over to Mark.
Yeah, fabulous to have you with us, Tanya, 202nd episode. Everyone brings something different, and I know we'll get some good insights from you today. Ritchie's touched on a couple of things, so I'm going to go straight in there. You've built brands successfully across many different areas, so theme parks, tech firms. Now you're leading the smart home revolution in many ways. So when you look back, what's the thread through that's connected everything that you've done in your career?
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, look, a bit of a squiggly career, as they call it. Agency for 12 years, and then client side now for 11 or 12. So half and half. But I guess the journey, I've learned something new along the way. Every single client, brief, challenge, whatever, has been a really incredible learning experience. But I think for me, the thread that holds everything together that I'm really passionate about, and you touched on it, is experience. So I think for me, the power of a brand, when you can kind of bring a brand to life, create a kind of emotional connection, whether that be a roller coaster or a theme park, right? And you see the kind of joy of families connecting, or that kind of escapism, or seeing, consumers come into Samsung KX where they sort of experience our seamless ecosystem and the power of technology and how that can, enhance and make their lives more convenient. That for me is really, really powerful. And being able to bring that kind of emotional, those emotional values of a brand to life through experience has been, I guess, what I have sort of looked for in roles and kind of really enjoyed and are really passionate about.
So you talked about what you look for in roles and, of course, the key element of experience. And today, I would say that that's one of the core themes when it comes to marketing leadership. So do you have a sort of sense of playbook or some of the key areas that we could all sort of take away here about how to create compelling experiences given your experience of a range of different places?
I think for me, and it goes back to kind of best practice marketing in some ways, right? What is your brand purpose? What are your values? What do you believe in? How do you kind of manifest that in a way that kind of feels more meaningful in a sort of 3D world? What's your product differentiation? What does the product do, and how does the product benefit the consumers' lives? How does it tap into culture? And how do you kind of create those moments that feel kind of unmissable because they tapped into a kind of cultural trend?
Go on, give us an example, something that you've done recently.
One of my favorite experiences we ever created, when we launched Samsung KX, big flagship space in King's Cross. Those that haven't been, you should 100% go. We opened it 4 or 5 years ago. And to launch it, we said, what's the moment? How are we going to bring this to life? And we wanted to create, I guess, a moment that was kind of unmissable. So, and it was going to be a kind of a moment, right, an event, an experience. So we talked about, if you think about kind of experience, a lot of, at the time, what was being designed was, if you think about festivals or whatever else, it's all in landscape mode, right? It's all in, if you're at Glastonbury, even the Pyramid stage at the weekend, right? You're kind of filming it that way to kind of capture the full stage experience. So like, imagine if you sort of pivoted that. Everyone is filming in portrait mode these days. So we created the world's first vertical stage, and we had Mabel play. She was sort of on trend at the time. But we had a dancers at the bottom, I can't remember, it was the band at the bottom, she was in the middle, the dancers at the top. And actually, it was a moment perfectly designed to film on your mobile. And it was just one of those moments that felt really special because it was a launch moment. It was a sort of say, we've arrived, Samsung KX is here. But actually, it sort of tapped into culture and it tapped into trend and consumer. And it was a really unmissable moment, right? You couldn't recreate that anywhere. But the experience was specifically designed to film on your mobile to make it truly shareable. So that's probably one of my, there's been heaps, but...
Love it.
Well, that's a cracker. Great example. I'm curious, you've almost half and half agency client side, first half in agencies. Do you think that has made you a better marketer for having had that experience? What did you take from that time and brought into where you are now?
I think it's a really good found. I mean, look, when you're young and you're, single and whatever else, working in Chertsey, where Samsung is based, is not the most glamorous of locations. A lot of big businesses are based out of central London. So to be honest, I'm not going to lie, the big appetite for agency was, it's Oxford Circus, it's centre of London, there was a free bar on a Friday, all that sort of stuff that kind of appeals to agency. But actually looking back, and I guess having more time to reflect, you get such a breadth of clients, different businesses, different challenges, different kind of creative execution and output. So for me, it gave me that breadth, I think, which sometimes if you kind of go straight into client side, you kind of get a little bit brainwashed, right, in terms of how certain brands approach things. So for me, I just learned that, there are some businesses and brands that really, the brand is at the heart of their business. They have a really well-oiled process around how they build their brands. You have other brands that brand is a bit more sidelined. It's perhaps a little bit more intuitive or reactive. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all, right? You get that breadth of experience, but also creativity, right? When you're in a creative agency, you really understand how great creative ideas are kind of, I guess evolved. And I was client side, or client handler, but we'd sort of brief the planner, brief the creative team, and all that sort of stuff. But the beauty, we used to call it the Delta Force, was when planning, creative, and the kind of the triangle, right? And the I guess the person responsible for the client relationship, but also who probably knew the brand the best because they were kind of closest to that client. For me, I remember one pitch on Heineken, and we just sat in this room. Bambos Niafutu, ex-BBH, was in the room with me, Robinette, creative director, still at Exposure, and the three of us, we just sat for like 2 days, and it was just, you just go, this is just magic. And we had a brilliant, we won the pitch, great campaign, and there was just sort of magic working in agency like that.
Hey, totally. I can relate. It's funny you talk about the magic of being in central London, Oxford Circus, the vibe, the Friday nights. I almost feel like we kind of miss that these days. I kind of finish at 5 o'clock on a Friday, I'm like, okay, laptop down, sitting at home, probably kids in my ear going, where's that Friday feeling gone? It's kind of strange. But there you go, such is life. I want to come on, Tanya, and you talk about the sort of your breadth of experience, multiple brands, and in fact, maybe, you talk about, being at Samsung for quite a while. What would you say are some of your maybe career tips or advice that you would give others looking to follow suit, either agency side or brand side?
So look, I made the decision to move from agency to client side for a couple of reasons. One was I'm a bit of a control freak, and I think when you're agency side, you get a part of the brief, right? You kind of get, the campaign execution here, or whatever, but you don't really get full control of the end-to-end consumer journey. And for me, going client side and brand side, you you have more of that autonomy, right? You can really impact everything from product development through to whatever it is in terms of demand gen and acquisition, right the way through to the kind of loyalty piece, driving that. And it's a very, very different level of, detail and kind of expertise, I guess. So I've loved that about client side. But look, I think there are real benefits of being agency as well. I think I don't know these days. is it still hard? It felt hard to transition when I was doing it. I felt like I had to sort of take a bit of a step backwards to sort of go forwards. But equally, I'm really pleased I've done both. I think it makes me a better agency partner, or client partner, if you like, to agencies, because I understand where they are coming from. I'm a better client, I think, as a result of sat on the agency side.
How do you think agencies are feeling today? Because there's lots of sort of heat around.
Yeah.
What's your
It's tough, and I think, goodness, it was tough when I was there. God, towards the end, I was like, excuse my language, but pitch bitch, you know what I mean? It was just constant pitching, and you're constantly trying to, delve really deep into you've got whatever, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it might be, and it's hard to do that. And I think it's even harder. There's more competitive, but I think the one thing that I definitely see in agencies, or I certainly look for in agencies now, is when I was agency side, we were quite specialist in experience, and then we tried to, pivot a bit more, and we were doing a bit more integrated work and a bit more advertising and PR and social. And I definitely now, so we became more of a generalist agency, a core creative agency or whatever, led with culture and all the rest of it. But I think for now, I look for much more specialist agencies. So agencies that can really bring a specialism to, and then actually my job as the client is to bring all that together. Because I think that's the thing that was tricky and days gone past. It was like, but hang on, they're really disjointed ideas, and I've got loads of agencies, and actually I was always very good at sort of bringing the sort of story together. But yeah, I think it's really tough. But I think as an agency, I think find your niche and really focus on that and build your specialism, because I think that's what, as a client, that I'm looking for, certainly.
Great advice. Now then, Ritchie knows my pain that I've got a young puppy, a young puppy with separation anxiety. So that puppy cam is the most important device in our house right now. I'm going to talk about smart homes, obviously. Moving back to the topic. So yeah, I mean, smart homes has sort of crept up steadily in the last few years. The connectivity in the house, the number of devices and so on. So what's emerging in that space from your perspective, and how are you pushing Samsung into that space?
So look, I think it's no news to anybody, but AI is now everywhere, right? And I think we kind of launched a lot of our products in AI last year, and we're sort of building on that. I think to start with, we were a bit kind of nervous, right, about, even I think the transformation in the last 6 months, even about, my mum knows what AI is, that's sort of saying something, right?
What's her take on it?
Well, I think she's just a bit like, I don't need it to do this, I don't need it to do that. Why would I need to do that, But actually, I think when you break it down and really simplify, and I think that's our goal within certainly the kind of areas that I work in. Look, some of our products do incredible things. You've got a fridge that recognizes the food. When you put it in, we'll create an inventory. We'll tell you then when things are going out of date. We'll recommend a recipe based on the food you've got in your fridge, send the recipe to the oven. Your phone can tap into your oven. It can tell you when things are burning. These are really impressive technologies, but the reality is it can be quite a lot. Especially for my mum, or people like my mum. So for us, it's really about simplifying it, breaking it down, humanizing it, and really focusing on the meaningful benefits. So what does it mean to have, a fridge recognize your food? Well, actually, ultimately, it helps you reduce food waste, right? And there's some scary stat about how much food we throw away every year. And I'm guilty, you chuck it in, and do we really eat the meat in the order that the dates are, and all that sort of stuff? We're not good at that. So actually, having something that works in the background, that is just prompting you and inspiring you with, recipes or saying, this goes out of date, why don't you have a look at it tonight? That, for me, the benefit ultimately is reducing food waste, saving you money on your food bill each week. Those aren't hard things to explain. But actually, when you say, well, your fridge has got a camera in it, and it does this, it does that, it just gets too much for people, I think.
It's like Gromit in Wallace and Gromit. He's like, get it, it's just too hard.
Overload.
Yeah.
It speaks to a little bit around the thought of brand purpose. And you haven't mentioned that term per se, but actually in a lot of the benefits that you describe, it very much is the heart of that. And I know you're a major champion for things like sustainability. And I wonder to what extent does that kind of flow through the thread when you're developing marketing and brand strategy?
Yeah, I think, look, firstly, you've got to be really careful around that word, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's huge ramifications around greenwashing and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely don't think we are, waving that sustainability flag in a way that feels inauthentic or not backed up with real hard sort of data and insight. But what I do say we do is we do champion consumers, or we champion consumers to or empower them, I guess, to be more consciously sustainable, right? So in Smart Things, our connected platform, there's a really simple area called kind of Smart Things Energy. When you go in there, it'll monitor the energy usage of your products or your appliances. And again, just give you those prompts and things to kind of go, well, actually, by swiping, we've got something called AI Energy Mode. If you swipe it once. It's a bit like battery saving mode in your phone. You know when you sort of need it, when you need the Uber and you're like, oh God, my battery's running out of my phone's running out of battery. You just swipe it in Smart Things. And actually, by doing that, what happens is, through the power of AI, and won't get too techie, but ultimately, your appliances will be optimized to save you energy. So we're championing things that matter to consumers, but in a way that feels simple and easy to them by doing things like that, and giving them those tangible benefits. You know, a lot of our washing machines, refrigerators are absolutely top-class energy. Our innovation is, that's the way the market's going, that's the way consumers are going, so we're developing products that deliver against what consumers need,
Perfect.
So I think we've got a sense of you already. You know, you're erudite, you're dynamic, you're energetic, and I think we maybe have some of your team in the room. But I want to get a sense of you as a leader. So what's your perspective on how to build high-performing teams?
I have got a few of them there. Hi, team.
We'll check afterwards, by the
well,
way.
Yeah, you can check. I got my 360 feedback yesterday, so I can speak from the heart. Look, I am really energetic, and I think positivity and energy is something that I don't even really have to work at. It's just my natural way. And I think all the feedback I've had over the years has been that's a really good trait in a leader, right? If you can leave people. I remember once I was sat in a leadership course and someone said, you've got to be inspiring to be a leader. And I was like, what does that mean? Do I have to come up with quotes or, tell them to read books? What does inspire? And then someone said to me, the definition of inspiring is leave someone with more energy than when they first kind of interacted with you. I thought, I can do that. I can get someone in a room and go, come on, guys, I've got that kind of natural energy. So that's probably my infamous trait, if you like. But I think other than that, it's the basics, right? It's give clear strategy, clear direction, have a clarity of purpose of where you're going and why you're going there, some metrics of success, and some really refined, clear metrics of success that are aligned with stakeholders, so you're not measuring everything, but clear metrics. And then it's just about, breaking down those barriers for them and letting them flourish. I feel like I'm sometimes the one that just, what's the problem? How can I, go and shout at that person or, bully legal to do what we want them to do? Or, you know what I mean? You're there as sort of, you've got their backs and you're there to sort of break down the barriers and clear the path for them, really.
That's the hustling of being agency side, being on the handling side.
Yeah, do you think?
Yeah.
I don't, it's one of the things, is that what we do in agency? We just sort of
clear the path.
Clear the path.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Maybe that's why.
There'll be many people here in the room today and listening in who would, Samsung would either touch them as a consumer or indeed as either someone they aspire to work with or for. And I wonder if you could perhaps impart some advice to them about the best ways to interact and get in and to network and to hustle. Is there any sort of secret sauce that you've gone over the years to be able to get where you've gotten to that would be useful for others in the room here today?
God, I feel like it's all luck. You kind of go, oh God, how did I get there? I think, look, I know we had a chat at the start, right? We all deprioritize networking and all this sort of stuff. And in my own admission, I don't do enough of this sort of stuff because lives are busy and business is demanding. But I do think, actually, so my entry from agency to client side was through an old client. So he was my old Heineken client. He went to Merlin. And I remember at a Christmas party, I was chatting to him, and I was like, I think it's time for me to go client side. Can you give me any advice? You've always been client side. What would I need to do? And he said, I'm at Merlin. Or actually, he was still at Heineken. He moved to Merlin. We kind of kept in touch. And then he was like, I've got a job opening. Do you want to come? And at the time, I was like, I'm not really sure. Is Merlin right for me? And I wasn't 100% making the move. And then, 6 months later, a role came up, and he contacted again. And, yeah, I think it was network. It was that's how I sort of made that leap to some degree. Look, he didn't get me the job, right? But he got me the interview. And I think that's what I would say. It is sort of sad to say, it is a little bit about network and collaboration, but also don't be afraid to reach out and ask advice and, find. Samsung rang me when I was at Merlin, do you want to open Samsung KX? And I was like, okay, what's this? That was fortuitous, right? That was not me banging down the doors of Samsung. But I think, you guys all know, right? Network and and being really proactive and intentional about what brands you want to work for, I think is important.
That's a great note to end on. Good call to action over the time you've got in these couple of days to network. I'm seeing Laura Fox over there, who is the go-to, the lightning rod for all things personal branding and networking. Tanya, it's been amazing to have you on. It's way too brief, but we've got some really rich insights. I'm going to steal that inspiring quote. Might even go on a post later.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. But lovely to have you with us today. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.